Hey, it's Father John Muir. Welcome to Catholic Breakfast. Today I want to talk with you a little bit about Dwight's owed favor from the TV show The Office and a little spiritual lesson there, right here on Catholic Breakfast. So one of the blessings of COVID-19 was I started watching The Office again. At some point I kind of fell off The Office wagon around, I think early season 6. The point is, I've been watching episodes of The Office and loving it. And I recently saw an episode in season 6 in which Dwight and Andy get in this battle of gift giving. And as I'm watching this, and it's really funny, I thought there's a deep theological thicket there, and it's something that in our Catholic theological tradition is something we've really struggled with. And I think a spiritual lesson in that as well. So if you want to see what I'm talking about in The Office, YouTube Dwight's owed favor. Or if you know what episode it is in season 6, check it out. What happens is Dwight brings bagels for the office, and then he knows everyone is now in his debt. And then Andy figures out what's going on, and he doesn't want to owe Dwight a favor because he feels like now Dwight's got power over him. So he says, I shined up your suitcase. Dwight says, here's something I can do for you. And then they get in this basically this wrestling match of who can outdo the other in giving of gifts. Now, it's funny because we all know what it's like to be stuck in this kind of debt-owing slavery. I give you a gift. Seems like just a nice thing to do, right? But now you owe me something. There's a light side of that dark side. The light side is gift giving is how friendships grow. Friendships require reciprocity. And so you do a nice thing for me, I do a nice thing for you. That's how the friendship goes, right? But it can very subtly become a game of power. And that's what's so funny about the Andy and Dwight thing, because as it escalates, it's so clear these guys don't really care about the other person. All they want is either power over the other person, they want to be owed something, and they don't want to be in another person's debt. The more you kind of press into this, you realize this is actually a challenging thing. In fact, in Catholic theology, Christian theology, it's one of these interesting things theologically in terms of our relationship with God. How does this work? If God gives us grace, and are we in God's debt? Now is God just trying to get us under his thumb in terms of now I owe you this, or I'm giving a gift now to kind of get a certain distance? I think some Catholics in their spiritual life treat God that way. Like, God, I went to Mass on Sunday for you, so there's my thing for you. Now stay away from me, right? I do not want to owe you anything. Obviously, there can be a kind of pathology spiritually in our relationship with God when things devolve like that, and a pathology in our relationships with each other. It can happen in marriage, right? Honey, I did this, now I have a credit, right? Or honey, you did that for me, now I owe you something. It's hard for love to thrive in that kind of environment. Here's two ways maybe to ask God for the grace to avoid two ways of falling off the horse in this regard in terms of gift giving in our relationships, whether it's with God or with each other. The first way to mess it up is I don't reciprocate at all because I don't want to be in someone else's debt. This is the short road to isolation and loneliness. People will stop giving you time and love and attention if you just cut off. So that's not a healthy thing. You have to enter into the messiness of relationship with the Lord, messiness with the relationship with each other. It's not perfect, but just to not reciprocate is to finally be lonely and isolated. But secondly, there's a grace we need to ask for, I think, which is, God, help me to reciprocate in a way that is truly for the good of the other. Not for my sake in some indirect way, right? That's what gift giving is. With Dwight and Andy, hey, here's a bagel, now you owe me. The bagel was never finally an act of love. It was an act of veiled egoism. So the grace is, Lord, help me do this. And the most practical way to do it is enemy love. Remember, Jesus says, love your enemies. Well, you can't love an enemy indirectly for yourself because your enemy is against you. Think of when Jesus says, when you throw a party, don't invite people who can pay you back. It's good practical advice because you're giving the dinner to get something back, so to have them in your debt. I think here too of the parable that Jesus tells, maybe to kind of flesh out what this looks like in a healthy spiritual way, in our relationship with God, in our relationship with others. It's when Jesus tells the parable about the landowner who gets so upset at the guy whose debt he forgives, and then that steward or man who was in his debt now goes and throws another guy in jail because the guy owes him money. In other words, God is not in the game of giving us graces, forgiving us, giving us natural gifts, supernatural gifts, material things, spiritual things. He's not in the game of giving those things to us so that we're imprisoned in our debt to God. That parable shows us that God gives us gifts, creation, everything that's good in our lives he gives to us so that we can freely reciprocate. Now think of why we go to Mass. Not to kind of keep God off our back. What is the Eucharist? That word means thanksgiving, to respond freely in this act of thanksgiving, to recognize that we owe God gratitude for everything that we have. I think when we start to engage God that way, then we start to have more freedom to give time and energy and good things to other people, not as an act of indirect egoism, like we see with Dwight and Andy, but as authentic gifts of love. Then we can start to reciprocate love in our lives with people in a more healthy and free and grateful way. Let's ask God for that grace. Check out that video with Dwight's owed favor and see that as not a good spiritual place to be. And let's ask God for the grace to be more genuine and free in our giving and receiving of love. Thanks for joining me, everybody.